What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares and set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. Welcome back, Nightmare Success In and Out listeners. I am, man, do I have a treat for you guys. So we talk on this podcast about what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt? How do you survive? Well, today, for the first time, I've got a retired police officer on here, Kevin Donaldson. And he's got a super big podcast that is doing great things, but he nearly lost his life in the line of duty when a bullet grazed his head. And it set off a lot of things in his life, and he went down a dark path. He had post-traumatic stress, and there's a lot of things that happened with him and how he walked through that and how he got through that. He started realizing once he got past that darkness, he started figuring out that he could help people with his experience and how he got through it. And those dark moments that he had, he could walk beside people and help them. And I can't wait to unwrap all this today, but the Suffering podcast, check it out. I told Kevin today I've been deep inside his head because I've been in his podcast. I've been when he was a guest on a podcast. But what I like about what he says about the Suffering podcast is suffering is the way to sustainable success. So it's fascinating how he's done it, what he's done, and how he's come to the side. And the other thing that he's done is he's got a nonprofit called Dented Development Project that is also a piece that we'll get into. But Kevin Donaldson, welcome. So happy to have you here today.
Wow, you really did your research on me. You humbled me. Well, show's over. There's nothing left to say. You pretty much covered it all.
So, Kevin, I got to tell you, I was just telling you, I was down riding the bike this morning, in the basement. And I'm listening to this and listening to your story. I just couldn't get enough of how you did what you did. But I want you to take the listeners back a little bit, because you didn't come at being a police officer that as a little kid, I'm going to grow up and be a policeman.
Not at all.
That wasn't your game. So how did you grow up? What was your world as a kid growing up?
My world was filled with lots of bad guys. So I grew up in the Atlantic City area, and that was the time of Nicky Scarfo Jr. running the streets and Georgia Avenue. Everything was corrupt. They had a piece of every single construction project. One of my very, very good friends that I went to high school with, his father was Crazy Philly and Eddie.
Wow.
And yeah, and it just so happened that, freshman year, his father turned evidence against Nicky Scarfo. I never saw my best friend again. So you learn real quick how fragile that life is. And that life, it's not a life it's a life that I dabbled in. Yeah. Let's put it this way. I wasn't always an upstanding member of society. Mm-hmm. But a lot of those habits I came from because the worst guy that I was around was the guy that I was living with. My father was a nightmare. He was oppressive. He was demeaning in a lot of different ways. And there was some really bad abuse that went on in that household. So you try to find your way.
How many kids were in that household? What did you have sibling wise?
It was just me and my brother.
Okay.
He was the first. I'm a younger brother, so that it toughens you up a little bit.
Sure.
But you try to make a name for yourself as a younger brother.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't nailed down, I'd try to steal it. I stole it. Yeah, I used to walk into convenience stores, and I can say the name of the one convenience store. It was Groveland, and I would walk out with handfuls of stuff. My friend, I was never afraid to do that, and I don't know why. I mean, who knows what would have happened if I would have got caught. But I was never afraid, and my friends always knew that. Hey, listen, if we don't have money, and we were not economically sound by any means,
right?
So a couple candy bars given out to my friends, I'd give them out. It wasn't even that I wanted them; I didn't need them, so I'd give them out to my friends, and all of a sudden, you build up some sort of status as that because people are starting to like you. You're always looking for that acceptance because I wasn't getting that acceptance at all.
Yeah, a little kid. Yeah.
And I was a terror to a lot of different people. I wasn't a very nice kid. There was and it's a great story to give you a little window into how I grew up. So when I was in 6th and 7th grade, there was a kid, and I'm friends with him now, so I can say his name. His name is Jay Aponte. So I grew up in a town called Absecon, New Jersey, and it was a very white suburban town. And Jay was Puerto Rican. He was the only. I think we had a couple black guys and one Puerto Rican. That was Jay. Jay was the nicest kid in the world, but because I had all this stuff going on at home, I took out my aggression on him, and I just bullied the hell out of him. And then he leaves school, right? And it was the first time. I'm very lucky because my humanity never left me. Like, even though I was not a nice kid, but I still had that little bit of humanity left in me.
You didn't lose your heart.
He leaves school, and I looked for this guy because I felt bad. I mean, some of the stuff we used to do to him, it was a nightmare. I looked for him, and you could never find him. So I spent 30 years looking for him, and then the advent. It's one of the good things of social media. I was able to find him, reach out to him, and have him on my show. And I'd say to Jay to this day, I said, "You're the biggest son of a bitch I ever met in my life," because when I went face to face with him, or when I talked to him on the phone the first time, I said, "Look, I want to apologize for how I was as a kid. I felt bad about it for a very long time. I can't imagine what I did to you growing up." And he goes, "Listen, man, we were just kids. I forgive you." It's like, "You son of a bitch, man! Can't you just can't you just ream me out a little bit, make me feel a little bit better?"
Maybe, yeah.
And it turns out he's a cop. He grew up to be a cop in New York, and I had him on my show, which was one of the more difficult shows. It was like it was very early on. It was like 12 or 13, and we sat face to face across from each other and went out to eat afterwards, and now we became friends. And the crappy part about that is when you're damaged and your foundation is so broken when you're a kid, you can't. No matter what you do in life, no matter what good things you do in life, you're never going to build a solid structure above it. My foundation was nothing. It's like building a castle on sand. So Jay comes in, and we hug and we embrace and we become very good friends. But I lost out for 30 years on somebody who was a wonderful human being and turns out to be a really, really good friend.
Yeah.
That's the regret that I have to live with. But at least I was able to
you were
make
able
amends.
to capture it back in, though. A lot of people don't get that ever.
No, I was very fortunate with that. Yes.
So Kevin, did you have a normal, like, I mean, I understand that the home was kind of tough. I mean, it sounds like that was a place that, did you have an escape? I mean, was school the escape? Where did you go to feel like you were belonged?
I had a group of friends that, unfortunately, most of that group of friends turned out to go to jail.
Yeah.
And as I moved into high school, it just got worse and more progressive. I ran football pools betting pools out of my high school. And me and my friends, if somebody didn't pay, you rough them up a little bit. You think you're this big gangster when really you're just a scared, snot-nosed kid. And we bonded over that stuff. So that was my escape. With school, thankfully, I was pretty good at school. Like I was this is not an ego trip, but I was able to read something once and remember it and retain it. So I never did homework. I was the kid spitting spitballs at the teacher in the back because I just found no challenge in it.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing there for me. As a matter of fact, in kindergarten, they tried to keep me back because they said I was what did she call me? A social butterfly. Well, I wasn't a social butterfly. I was bored as hell, and I didn't want to listen to this stuff anymore. But ultimately, those group of friends that I was around, I knew I had to get out of there, or else I was going to go down that same path.
Yeah.
I knew it, and thankfully, I did play sports growing up. You know, I played football, basketball, baseball, but I was better at football. And when it was time to graduate and go to college, I took one that was far enough away where I couldn't come home all the time, but if there was an emergency, I could come home.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 2.5 hours away, and that's how I ended up in North Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, and don't you think too that, you know, I played sports too. There's something about sports that is kind of the great equalizer. You know, you can show up. You know, I played basketball and football, and like you can show up black, white, Hispanic, and if you show up at that court and you got game, you can play and you can be part of it. And I think that's an interesting dichotomy of the bigger part of our world is that sports, I think, allows you to become part of and accepting of those people who become a team. And it doesn't matter who they are. Can you win with them? Can you be a team with them? And there's something I think about sports, because I think about when I went to prison, really strangely, down deep, playing sports kind of helped me get through that. And I would have never have thought that. But sports, I feel like, is something that creates a playing field that you all come together. It doesn't matter what your last name is, how much money somebody has. Can you win with me? Can you be a good team player with me? And it's a little bit different.
So it's one of the few level playing fields on life, right?
Yeah.
Life is not fair. We all know this. I know your story very well. Life is not fair. But on the football field, everybody starts at the same place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you all start in the beginning. And you have an opportunity if you're willing to work. And yes, obviously there are some kids who are a little bit more talented, a little bit more athletically inclined, but hard work beats talent every single day.
Yeah.
And especially when talent doesn't work hard.
I love that.
So yeah,
that's
hard
a great
work
saying too. Yeah.
Hard work beats talent, especially when talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah.
And you know, I had some really great coaches who really, really believed in us. But on my football field and in different sports I played, there's no black, white, Republican, Democrat.
No.
It was the best thing in the world, and that's why today, not to get too far into that, but putting politics in sports.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting tongue tied.
It's kind of hard to say.
Putting politics in sports is the worst thing you could ever do.
Awful. It's the one place that it should never be.
Right. You know, how many kids growing up, if you didn't get along with your father or your brother, you could sit on a couch and watch the game, watch baseball, football, World Series, Super Bowl, hockey, whatever you're into. Just have some common ground.
Everybody comes together right there. Yeah. Yeah.
And that right there, you know, me and my father, we didn't get along on anything except for the Philadelphia Phillies and the Philadelphia Eagles.
There you go.
And that's the only thing we agreed on. So there was at least that one thing. And you know,
but that one thing is a big deal, though. I mean, and you know, we've crept into, and we're getting off on this deal here, but that we've crept into that where that special place, that sacred land, wherever that is, the playing field shouldn't be messed with, because that's a place where kids really learn. You know, that's where kids really get a feel for being part of a team. And like you said, some kids are better. Some kids, you know, have talent, but if they don't work hard, the work hard kid will beat them up and they'll make it. And that's good for everybody to know, because that's life. But, you know, I don't know where that's all going to go, because we're teetering on the edge, on the cliff on that. And I certainly hope that we don't jump off that, because that's a place that if we lose that for kids to have that, for them to play on that field. Like, you know, I think back when I grew up as a kid, you know, that that neighborhood field where everybody gets picked to be on a team and you play, you know, it's supposed to be touch football, but it's tackle, and you play baseball and whatever that is that happens, that dynamic that happens without adults around and you play on that field. If we lose that, I think we lose a piece of whatever makes us who we are as, you know, if you really want to take it, a country, because those pieces of that environment in the neighborhood, if we lose that and that becomes something different later, I don't know what that is.
If you ever coached a youth sport and you see a kid who is not that talented, who may not even have the drive to play football, make that one little small piece of progress, and you look in their eyes, you will see the benefits of sport.
Absolutely.
But here's another one for you, Brent. So when I went to college, I played college football.
What'd you play? What's position?
I was, I went in as an offensive tackle. They had an offensive tackle who was a sophomore. I knew if I stayed there, I would never play. So I lost a bunch of weight and became offensive guard.
Okay. All right.
So I just wanted to play. That's all I wanted to do was play. And when you're on that offensive line.
And you're a big guy. You're like 6'4", something. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So when you're on that offensive line, I'm talking to these people. And I do this in limited swatches with my seventh grader. Mm-hmm. When I'm saying things to him that are so nasty and so vile, I'm just trying to get his goat. Like, you know, I was not the cleanest player in the world, but I was doing a psychological
clean on the
thing.
line, though, can you?
No, I used to go in. Well, my go-to move was I'd get underneath their pads and I'd pinch their nipples. And I'd get them nice and aggravated, and I'd walk past the ref. I was like, yeah, keep an eye on number 70 there. He's getting a little dirty. Sure enough, he'd come back and get me. But it was a psychological game. Yeah. I need to get every edge I can over that person. So I would say these awful things on the line to people, and we'd go in and we'd do battle. And after the game, more times than not, we'd shake hands and then we'd go have a party because we left it out on the field. Yeah. And that's the best metaphor for life I can tell you. There's going to be times throughout this life where you're going to get aggravated. You're going to get fired up. If you can release it and live in the moment, God, the world would be a completely different place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's like, I mean, what you're reminding me of is you know, when Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, they would fight all day and then they go as two Irishmen and have a drink at the end of the day and tell some stories. If we could get back to that in our country, wow, what a different place that'd be. So Kevin, when you got past all that, how in the world did you end up being a police officer? Well, how did that path go for you?
Some people believe in serendipity. Some people believe in coincidence. Some people believe in chance. I believe that you're always placed in a position where you're absolutely supposed to be every moment of the day. You know, you went to prison. You might say you got a bad break. You didn't get bad luck. You were supposed to be there because there was a reason why. If you would have never gone to prison, you would have never been doing nightmare success.
Exactly.
So, when I went to college, I went to college, believe it or not, because I did a complete 180. I felt something for theological studies. I loved reading the Bible, right? Oddly enough. So I first went in for theological studies. I kind of lost my faith after I had a class with a guy named Dr. John Becker, who was he was an ex-Jesuit priest who married a nun, so he was no longer a priest. And we read the Bible as literature, and you realize how violent the book is. Mm-hmm. And so I lost my faith. So I said, okay, I'll become a school teacher. You know, I'll be able to shape young minds with the love of literature and what it means. So I always wanted to become a teacher. And I went through my whole college career, went through postgraduate, going to be a teacher. I knew I was never going to play professional football. So that was where I went. I taught high school for a year, and I absolutely hated it. I hated it. I didn't hate the kids.
No.
I hated the other teachers.
Yeah.
With a passion. Yeah. And also, I don't
like
do
the
well.
Teachers lounge?
No. And I don't do well in confined spaces.
Right. Okay.
So that's why, thankfully, I left that life of crime because I don't think I would have done very well in prison.
Yeah.
So that confinement of the classroom just sort of grabbed me. And after a year, I said, you know what, this isn't for me. I went through all this schooling. I'm like, what a waste. But it wasn't a waste.
Right.
And then I bounced around from a couple different jobs. I sold cars. I was traveling coast to coast with a new web company selling software to private country clubs, and that that was cool. I did that for about a year and a half, but I was living out of a suitcase for 4 weeks out of the month, and I was single. I didn't have any kids, so it was cool for about 6 months, and then that got really old.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the gym one day. And there was a guy I knew who I'd work out with. I just work out with him. He worked out real hard. He was an older guy. Turns out he was the retired deputy chief of the prosecutor's office in one of the counties in New Jersey. And he goes, "Did you ever think of becoming a cop?" My brother, on the other hand, took police test after police test. That's all he wanted to do. I always saw myself as a criminal. I was like, criminals don't become cops.
Criminals don't become cops. That should be like a T-shirt.
But it turns out criminals make the best cops.
Yeah, because they understand.
We've done it all. We've done it all, and we've gotten away with our share of stuff. Yeah. So we have a little bit of our humanity when it comes to the minor things.
Yeah.
So my brother, who always took tests, one time the state police test in New Jersey, he's like, "Take the test." So I do it on a whim, and this is, I don't know, 99 or something like that. And at the time, the state police was in upheaval over not having the right group in their classes. So I filled out the application, put it in, and I got a letter back saying, "You don't meet their qualifications." I said, "I don't meet their qualifications. What are you talking about? I've never been arrested.
Yeah.
I don't have a traffic ticket.
Right.
I have postgraduate degrees. I have all this stuff."
Yeah. Well, so
what do you mean I don't?
Right.
I read between the lines a little bit, and I personally think it was a little discriminatory, but you know what? I didn't care because I didn't really want it. But in the gym this time, he goes, "Well, I got a friend and they're hiring." And I really didn't like the job that I was in. So I said, it was a pretty good package sold to me. It's like, you get a pension, you won't get rich, but you'll make a good living. Mm-hmm. You get benefits, you get all this stuff. So I took the test and I did very, very well in the test. So I got hired. I'm like, all right, cool. But when I took the job because it was a job.
Yeah.
I didn't take it because it was a call thing. I just took the job because that was it.
It was available and you passed.
I found out.
Yeah. So you took the job because it was available. You passed it, and it could be a job that could, for what you just said, Kevin, you make decent money. There's a pension in it, and I know from listening to you, there is also your background of service. So I think in your deep soul, going all the way down to whatever that underbody is of Kevin Donaldson, you wanted to be of service. And whether that was teaching or whether that was being a police officer, you were trying to figure out what that was.
I always loved helping people, people who couldn't help themselves.
Yeah.
I coached Little League when I was like 16 or 17 years old, and it was an amazing experience. The parents, on the other hand,
it's a different deal.
Yeah, but teaching the kids and just seeing that little bit of growth, and giving them not picking them up and placing them place, just giving them a little nudge in certain areas, and that's what I found in police work. But unfortunately, when I was in the police academy, 9/11 happened, so everything changed.
Had to be weird, though, right? I mean, it was. It had to be weird because the whole world changed when 9/11 happened. I can't imagine being in the position you were, going into the police world, being a police officer, and everything changes. I mean, overnight, everybody thinks differently. I mean, how in the world could we have two buildings be knocked down? We're the United States of America. And then the police force are the people that protect everybody. I can't imagine what was running through your mind.
One of the first questions when I was going in for my initial interviews, because I guess I don't know if it was, I always felt like I was a coward. And one of the questions I asked the police chief, I said, "Have you ever lost somebody in the line of duty?" And he says, "No." I said, "Okay, that's good."
Good answer.
Yeah, right. So we're sitting in the police academy, and I could tell you everything about it because I remember very clearly. I'm sitting next to a girl named Kristen Kappelman, and she comes in she's important in just a moment. Our captain of the police academy comes in. His name is Jack McGroarty, and he comes in. He says, "A plane just hit the World Trade Center." Up until that point, planes hit the World Trade Center and the Empire State Building all the time. Right. You know, little Cessna planes. Corey Liddell from the New York Yankees, he ran into it. And,
right.
So we didn't think anything of it. It was no big deal. But Kristen Kappelman, she goes, "Crap, my father works in the World Trade Center." But again, there was no terror.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, a little bit later, he comes in. Another plane hit the World Trade Center, and then we're like, "Oh crap! What is this? What is going on now?" Our departments recalled us, and we were 2/3 of the way through the academy. My lieutenant. Now we had a couple high value targets in the town that I worked in, so terrorist targets they would consider, but because we just didn't know if we were being invaded. Like nobody in the knew. Pentagon and in Pittsburgh So we get recalled and we're told to go stand post at certain places, and we're handed our gun. Now we hadn't qualified with a gun yet. They just handed you a gun and say, "Hey, don't shoot somebody." That's what I was told. And I'm holding this piece of metal in my hand. I'm like, okay, I guess this crap's for real, So I go out and stand post, and everything gets sort of figured out. We finish the police academy, and then I hit the road. And boy, I got a rude awakening when I hit the road. To what police work really was. It's not just a job. It's a true calling. It feels good to be there for somebody when they call for help.
Yeah.
Well, you don't understand that. That's why superhero movies are so valuable in our society, because you don't, when you don't know what to do and you're looking for a place to go, hey, I'd love to be able to call Superman in and save the day.
Yep.
And so that was a good feeling, and I think my first day on the job, it was a dead body, which I had never, outside of a funeral home, I'd never seen a dead body. And
how does that work, Kevin? I mean, I can't imagine, because I'm not good, and I'm from the funeral business, and I never was good with dead bodies, and which is really weird because we owned a lot of funeral homes and cemeteries. But when you get pushed into, because I know that you handled like road accidents and guys blowing their heads off. When you came upon that, what was going through your mind? I mean, what does that feel like? Because I don't think people really know what that's like when you come upon something that you don't normally see. And that's a lot different than seeing it on TV or some horror movie that you're watching. It's different.
You go to work. That's what it's all about. So you go to work.
You lock in.
You focus. You remove yourself that whatever you're looking at used to be a human, but it's no longer a human being, and you go to work.
Okay.
And then the science begins. And that's why something like accident investigation, it appealed to my nature because it was a challenge. I mean, there's some of the math equations, and they're like this long. And I enjoyed it, but walking up on that dead body, you deal with it in a lot of unhealthy ways. You get the gallows humor. I know morticians do it. I know, or not morticians. I know medical examiners do it. But I'm sure they have it too.
Yeah.
You look at the body as a science experiment. You remove yourself that used to have a soul, and then you start to see things that people aren't supposed to see. You're not supposed to look at the insides of bodies. But it's like detective work. Okay, you're looking at a person laid out on the slab, and they look. There's no marks on them. There's no nothing, and then they start cutting them open, and you're like, oh, okay, that's why they died. They had an aortic tear, and their chest cavities filled with blood, and they're cutting open the rib cage. And maybe this sounds a little sick, but I enjoyed that. I enjoyed getting in there and getting my hands dirty with that stuff. But you deal with it with very, very bad humor sometimes. There was an accident. If anybody listened to us talk, they would think we're insane. There was a husband and wife slammed into a tree. The husband had a massive medical event, slammed right into a tree, license plate first. And I'm the first one on scene, and I take a bar and I try to break the window to see if the woman is still alive. And it was those old cars with the automatic seatbelt.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. Nobody wore them, and they sat behind them. Yeah.
nobody put the lap belt on, which was the most important part.
They don't use them anymore. Yeah.
So I break, and it's called a Halligan bar. It's a big crowbar. I break the window with the Halligan bar, and it goes straight through the window and hits the woman on the shoulder. She was long since dead. She was in a spot like about this bunch. So one of the newer officers, who was a little squeamish, comes by and he's, gosh, I wonder what the last thing went through her head was. And I said, it was the dashboard.
Oh,
problem solved.
Kevin.
Yeah, but that's a coping mechanism.
No, and I think that's a good point though, because their humor in dark times is real. Humor this is why I think it's interesting talking to you about being a police officer, because humor in prison is real. They think, is it always bad? Is it always, dark and no color and all that? No, there's humor, and you laugh and you get through and you feel better, when you laugh. It's a coping mechanism. You have that, whatever that is, that's human. It gets you to the next step. And sometimes that's humor. And it's weird because at the lowest point, you can say something funny and it releases something and you get to the next step.
The endorphins inside of you, it's like a drug. Drug addicts, they shoot for it or they snort it. The endorphin release during humor, during stressful times, really just evens stuff out.
Right.
That's the thing with any type of first responder job or a veteran or something. I will guarantee you talk to everybody and they will tell you they laugh more than they've ever laughed in their entire life. They'll come out of there with some stories. And that's why first responders in general and veterans in general are great storytellers.
Sure.
Those are the times that you remember. You do remember the horror, but you remember I laughed more as a cop than I've ever laughed in my life since. And that's the thing you miss mostly.
Well, and you said something that caught my attention because I watch Everybody Loves Raymond all the time, and his brother talked about that it's boredom with a few minutes or a few seconds of
interrupted by brief moments of horror.
Exactly. And
it's interrupted by brief moments of horror.
but I mean that to me really spoke to me because when you're on the beat, you're looking and you're seeing and you're trying to react to what's happening around you, but at any given point, if I remember right, the night that, and I could be wrong, but you were pulled up to another police car and you were like, I hope something comes on tonight, the crack of the radio or something. Was that the night that your thing happened?
July 10th, 2013.
Okay. So you're pulled up. I'm just leading into this story because I thought that was what it was. You were pulled up. There's nothing going on. And you're like, I'll go do anything. I just don't want to be out here. It's so silent. It's so calm. I'm looking for something. And then you get the crack of the radio and it's in the middle of the night. What is it? Midnight or 10 o'clock? I can't remember what time
it's
it was.
About 10. It's about 10:45.
Okay.
And there's markers and how
I'll
know
let you
that.
take it from there, Kevin, because I mean that to me I was like gripped from that point forward.
The worst thing for anybody is silence, is downtime, and you're stuck just trying to fill your time. And this is nothing new. And the reason I know this is nothing new, I was speaking to a D-Day survivor, and after D-Day got through, he had downtime, and what does he do? He goes and steals a car in France.
Wow.
And he gets busted by a 2-star general. Why did that happen? Because they had nothing to do.
Right.
It wasn't bullets weren't flying at him at all times. So, any cop will tell you there are certain times of night that you dread. They call them the witching hours, between 3 and 4 o'clock. Everybody's in bed. The only people that are out, the good thing is it's easy to spot the criminals because the only people that are out are usually up to no good.
Right. Right.
That night was one of those nights. It was a Wednesday going into a Thursday, and there was nothing happening. But we're a small suburban town where I worked, and we used to go pull on doors, make sure that all the businesses are locked up, and pretty much put the town to bed at night. I pull up next to my partner, and we're drinking coffee, and I'm like, just anything, just give me anything. I shoot a deer, go chase a turkey off the road, whatever it is. Which, by the way, turkeys mate for life. And the reason I know that is because I saw one get hit that was still alive. I tried to go put it down, and I ended up running away from another turkey, which was pretty funny. But so I go to do my checks to pull on doors, and everything changes with one crack of the radio. And that's what happened this night. It's start responding to this address, unknown, open line, 911. I hear yelling in the background, and that's all the information the officer on the desk had. Mm-hmm. So you don't know what you're going into.
Which I think Kevin, I think that's just fascinating. You have no idea what you're going into. I think for people listening to this, that is such a weird phenomenon, because most people that are at work, a normal job, they kind of know what they're going into, unless they've got a meeting and they don't, somebody's coming into town and they don't know how the meeting's going to go. That is totally different than getting a crack on the radio, and you're going in at 10:45 at night, and it could be somebody shooting at you, which is actually what happens. That is a totally different scenario that I don't know if people can actually grasp onto unless you walk through the scenario of your story, because it's not normal. What you do in that scenario is not normal, because people don't live that way.
You've been speaking to my wife too much. Don't call me not normal. But you have to understand the mentality of anybody that takes that job, or a fireman or EMS. Yeah. It's the same thing. And guess what? It's probably the reason why I'm friends with so many criminals, because it's the same thing in the criminal life. Yeah. It's that adrenaline. The adrenaline, something new every day. You don't know what you're going to walk into, and it becomes almost addictive. Mm-hmm. You live for those calls. You live for that. Okay, hey, listen, we got a pursuit coming through town, and go get them, and try to be safe.
Stuff.
It's great. That's the stuff that you look forward to.
Right.
This night, so we respond. And we don't go sirens because we don't want to look, or we don't know what's going on. So you have to be very tactical in how you respond to certain things. You don't want to alert your presence before you actually get there and get in position. So we're going lights, and we're doing 70, 75 miles an hour down residential streets. And when we get, it's a townhouse complex where we go into. There's three of us that show up there. I park my car right in front, which was the worst thing, and you'll find out why afterwards. And I get out of the car. Once again, that Halligan bar, which I used a lot. It's like a fireman's crowbar. Mm-hmm. It was in my back seat for some reason. We go up to the door, and we can hear yelling in the background. And we pound on the door, and all we hear is, "Don't come in here! Don't come in here!" So my partner goes around the back, and it's a middle unit. So the deck, there's only one way in, one way out. Well, actually, that's not true. Three ways in, so if you count the garage.
Okay.
I'm at the front door with another police. He was a lieutenant, and my partner's in the back. And on a signal, I start pounding in the door. It's a big steel front door, and it's not easy kicking in a door.
No,
so forget the movie.
It looks easy on TV.
Yeah, they're closet doors. They're hollow doors. Mm-hmm. This is a big steel door. There's a method to doing it. You pound by the lock, and you try to make a gap, and then you put the crow in there, and you pop it. So on the signal, I start pounding, and then I hear pop, 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 pop. I hear 4 gunshots. I throw the crowbar to the side. I get behind cover, there's a little window. I get behind, and it's a holy shit moment.
Yeah.
You're like, holy shit, what the hell just happened? I go over the radio. I say, shots fired. I really want to alert the surrounding towns to give us help. We ran on like 3 people at midnight. Mm-hmm. It was a 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift, and we need help. We don't know what's happening. We don't know who's in there. I just have to make sure that my
Kevin,
partner's
had you
okay.
ever been in a situation where you heard gunshots like that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I spent a lot of time in Atlantic City growing up, and I've heard gunshots.
No, I'm saying as a police officer, where shots are fired on the job,
in
behind the
anger,
door, you don't know what's going on.
in anger, no,
Okay.
not at this time.
Okay.
So shooting deer and stuff like this. It was a suburban town.
Right.
Deer that are injured by
Right. You put
cars.
them, yeah.
You put them down, and so I run around the back. Other officers are showing up, and they're covering the front door. I run around the back because I want to check on my partner. He's my primary concern right now. You make in your head, you categorize everything that's going on.
Split seconds.
You triage everything. Okay, this is the most important. I run to the back. I find my partner. He exchanged gunfire with the guy inside. We find out later on that the guy, his name's Anthony Vocaturo. He had recently broken up with the woman who lives in the house. Her son was in there as well, and he was going to kill her. Okay. So as he raised the gun to kill her, my partner shot through the sliding glass door of the back deck. It's like a little, let's say, 8x8 privacy deck with patio furniture on there. So he retreated after the shots were fired, and I go back there. Other officers are showing up, and we make a plan. Our plan is to go up on the deck. We can't see him. We can see the victim off to the side. She's, her knees are up at her chest. And after the shots were fired the first time, her son was able to get out. And that's how we knew a little bit more information. He's like, he's going to kill her. It's her ex-boyfriend.
How old is this kid?
Is he he's probably 18, 19. Okay. He was an adult.
All right.
He almost got shot. Because as I'm running around, knowing that the only person in the back is my partner, he comes up. I see him first, so he got the real good look down the barrel of a gun. Once I find out he's no threat, okay, get out of here. We go back there. So we get up on the deck, and there's maybe a 4-foot entrance. I get off to the right side because from the right side, the entrance would be on my left. From the right side, I can see everything in the sliding glass door. I can see the victim. We can't see this guy who shot. We have no idea where he is, but we know he's in there. So from where I was, it was a very sound tactical position. I couldn't be more wrong in my life. So I'm standing in the corner, and I see, I'm looking around. I'm like, okay, there's patio furniture. I can get cover behind there. It's wire patio furniture. Yeah. It's like Swiss cheese. Right. It's going to do nothing.
Right.
But our plan was me, my partner, and a sergeant were up there, and we're going to throw a chair through the sliding glass door, and we're going to make entry. We have to get to life. We have to go save life at all costs. Her life is that's the triage. Her life is the primary importance in our mind.
Right. That's why you're there.
The minute we throw the chair through the door, I mean, the second I see the brightest flash, I hear the bang, I feel the grains of gunpowder hit my face, and I feel my left ear wiggle.
Okay.
So this guy, if the sliding glass door is here, if I'm going to paint a picture, he was right here. He's standing behind a wall where we couldn't see him, and he reached around like this and fired.
Okay.
The bullet goes right past my ear. I hit the ground. I hit the deck hard. Now I fall on broken glass. I fall, and it's July, so it's hot as hell, and I fall like this.
On the glass.
On the glass. My shoulder hurts. The other two officers were closer to the entrance. They were able to retreat, but I'm stuck. I know if I try to crawl out, he's got a real good shot at me. I'm dead. So I don't know whether I'm shot. I'm figuring I'm going to die, and everything just slows down for me. Very clear. My clarity of thought was probably the most clear that it was ever in my entire life. I think about my kids. I had a 3-year-old and a 7 or 8 month old. My wife would have to raise them all alone, and my 3-year-old had seen me in uniform, but he's not gonna know his dad. My 7-month-old, he'll never remember me. I'll just be a name and a picture in a scrapbook.
Right. This is going through your mind at the time. The split seconds of time. Yeah.
Split second, and I said it's like slow motion video.
Yeah.
You don't understand how slow everything. I was on there for maybe, I don't know, anywhere from 45 seconds to a minute and a half, but I could see everything.
Yeah.
But I knew my wife was going to have to raise these kids all by themselves, all by herself. And, she's going to have to live with the fact that her husband died. Now, here's the good thing. This even goes through my mind. In the police world in New Jersey, if you're killed in the line of duty, your wife gets 3 times your yearly salary plus 50% of your pension. So financially, I'm like, so I was able to, I remember going, well, at least that's taken care of.
Wow.
Okay. Well, if I'm going to die, you're coming with me. So I get into a shooting position and I hear the other officers in the back. They're like, are you shot? And I'm like, I don't know. My shoulder hurts, but I see blood everywhere because my arms, I still to this day, I actually have some glass in here that they could never get out. It's too close to a vein. And I see blood everywhere. My shoulder hurts. I don't know whether I'm shot, but I don't care at that point.
You're going to take this guy down.
He's going. Little did I know that after he shot, he ran upstairs. When my partner exchanged gunfire with him, they hit him in the back. And he ran upstairs. I didn't see it. And the other officers, now the one lieutenant that showed up, and I'll never forgive him for this. He ran from the scene.
That's really bad.
No, the other officers, the 2 officers that were there, they saved my life because they were there and they were going to stay and fight. This guy, because he was an administrator, ran away and had to go call the chief for whatever reason. You got an active shooter going on, and I'll never forgive him for my life. I'm to this day, the only thing that I still hold anger to. I'm not even mad at the guy who shot at me. I'm mad at this guy because you left me to die. So the other officers were able to get me off of the deck. They grabbed the back of my belt to assist me because I'm on my stomach, and I was able to get off the deck. And we clear the area. We clear the victim. We're able to get the victim out. She went out the front door through the garage, so she's clear.
She's done.
Good job.
Wow.
He can stay in there for 5 years for all I care.
Right.
I don't care. We'll starve him out. So I'm thinking, I'm talking to the other guys. I'm like, oh my God, what the hell just happened? I don't understand this. This is not supposed to happen in this town.
Right.
But the thing of it is it can happen in any town at any moment, at any time.
Yeah. And
your life changes. So we held perimeter for like 2 hours until the hostage negotiating team shows up. I got blood everywhere and it's stinging from the sweat in there.
Do you realize at that time, Kevin, that you got grazed on the side of your head?
No. There's just a little trickle of blood coming out of my ear, and that's about it.
Okay.
We fully expected the guy to come running out and do what's called suicide by cop. He's obviously wants to die. He shot at police officers twice.
Right.
But he never did. We get out of there. The hostage team takes over, and I clear the area, and I have to go to the hospital. And I have to get a bunch of glass picked out of my arm. I realize I'm not shot, but parking my car in the front of the building was the worst move ever because I never carried my cell phone on me. This is 2013. It's not like today where you can't go anywhere without it.
All the notifications and you can't get away from your phone, right?
I heard that when you were talking with Matt Cox about that. As a matter of fact, I think I don't even have a smartphone. I had a LG flip phone.
Yeah, a little flip phone. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't even have my phone to call my wife. Now all the wives, the police wives, they talk to each other.
Sure.
And I was really afraid that somebody was going to hear that there was a shooting in town, call my wife, and hey, there was a shooting in Roseland. Is your husband working? Well, yeah, he is, and I can't get in touch with him. So I grabbed one of the EMT's phones. It's about 2 a.m. It's about 1:30 in the morning, I guess. Grab one of the EMT's phones, and it's one of the few numbers, thankfully, that I know off the top of my head. I think I know like 2.
We don't know anybody's numbers anymore because they're in our phones, right?
This is one that I knew, so I call her number and I said, "Look, imagine for a second being a spouse hearing this phone call." My wife's name's Tricia. I said, "Tricia, there was a shooting. I'm involved. I'm okay. I'm not shot. I have to go to the hospital. I have to get glass removed from my arm. I'm calling you from one of our
phone. Yeah.
EMT's phones. Yeah. I will call you as soon as I can." And then that's it. Imagine getting that call.
No, I can't imagine that. I mean, and it wasn't even your phone. It was coming from an unknown number.
Right. And, she can't leave the two kids home. They're too young.
Right.
She can't leave them home alone. So she's stuck there to her own devices, trying to find out little pieces of information. So I go there, officers, they take me there, and I get it. And I'm in a good mood. I'm happy that a good job was done. Like when you do a good job,
two people got out of
it
that should have been killed by the shooter, and they escaped. Yeah. And you guys made that happen. And yeah, absolutely.
So I felt really good about it. I get back to the scene after I get back. I have to go get my car. The guy was talked out and arrested. I get to my car. I get my phone. I get everything. I talk a little bit with the detectives. I write a report. So I get out of the police department about 5 a.m. in the morning, and I go home, and my adrenaline is just going. Mm-hmm. At the time, I was a real big runner, so I actually went out for a run before I went to sleep. Ran it off, and I'm just thinking about stuff. My wife was overjoyed by me coming home, and I go to sleep. I get about 4 or 5 hours of sleep. Really good, solid sleep. Mm-hmm. I wake up to about 50 phone calls from other cops, that saying what happened, because they all want to know. Mm-hmm. They're like, it's a giant sewing circle. They all want to know what happened. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, some guy went crazy and tried to kill us. And then, so that night, it's now Thursday. That night, me and my wife just want to get away. We get her mother to watch the kids. We just want to, just have some us time. We go to the movies. And to this day, I can't watch this movie we went to see. We went to go see a Seth Rogen comedy called This Is the End.
Okay.
Just to laugh. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a scene in the beginning of that movie where everybody's sort of getting sucked up to heaven. And, I think the bad people stayed on earth. That's what it was. But it was really loud. And it was a bang. Mm. It felt like a cinder block went on my chest. Like I started breathing heavy. I started sweating. I started really just felt like, bugs are crawling on my skin. And I was really uncomfortable. And my wife sees this, and I say, you know what? I got to go I didn't want to alarm her. She'd been through enough. I say, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I got to go to the bathroom. I'll be back. I get out in the hallway, and it's still like what I know that feeling just scared the hell out of me, because I'm sitting there in the hallway and I can't catch my breath. My heart's beating a million miles an hour.
Were you aware, Kevin, that that's what that was? I mean, were you aware that whatever that sound you heard was creating that effect to your body, or were you just responding to, oh shit, I feel weird, I'm leaving, I'm going outside? Or what? Where was your mind with that? Were you like, oh shit, this is all coming back because I've been through all this and that sound was something I can't deal with? Or were you just like, I don't know what's happening, but I got to get out of here?
Some police detective that I would have made, because I never put the two together.
Okay.
The evidence is staring me straight in the face, and I never put it together.
Yeah.
I just thought I was getting sick, or I was, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I'm out in the hallway, and my wife comes out, and she says, are you okay? I was like, yeah, my stomach's hurting. I made up something. I said, my stomach's hurting. I'll be back in there in a minute. She goes, no, you know what? She knew. Like, they're not stupid. Mm-hmm. She knew what was going on. And so we left. We walked out of the movie. Thankfully, we did, and so that night, the nightmares start. And the nightmares are stuck. It's something like you're stuck in a situation you can't get out, or somebody needs help and you can't get to them, or you pull out your gun and the bullet just droops out, or a bang flag comes out, like the old cartoons. And you wake up in the middle of the night so drenched in sweat that I actually, the first couple times it happened, I had to check to see if I wet the bed.
Wow.
There was one night where I rolled over and I grabbed my wife's arm. It was like a night terror. Mm-hmm. I grabbed her arm and really scared the hell out of her. The trauma that and it went on, and you try to hide it the best you can, because you think I'm better than this. What did you think
was going on? What, Kevin, were you like, these nightmares that happened, you probably hadn't had them. This starts coming on you. You've been in this movie. You get these sweats. You start having these nightmare sweats. Are you thinking, holy shit, I've got something that's kind of weird going on? Or what was your thought process with that?
you knew something was off. Something was happening, but you figured it was the duration was. I've had nightmares before about things that I've done,
right?
But you figure that the nightmares are going to stop relatively quickly. It's going to be a short duration thing.
Right.
That weekend, my parents still lived in South Jersey, and we want to we're going to get away. We're just going to get away from everything, and we're going to bring the kids down there. It'd be a nice little day trip and see my parents. The ride down was fine, and I'm sitting there and I'm talking to my brother, and my brother wants to know what happened. And this is where stuff starts really, like I really start to identify something's going wrong. My brother wants to know what happened. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I really don't want to talk about it. I really don't want to talk about it because my brother's a cop as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's interesting because he is a cop and somebody you could identify with because you're in the same thing, but you didn't want to share it with him. You're
a type A personality that is exhibiting signs of weakness. That doesn't happen. Like you can't do that.
Right.
You show weakness on the streets, they'll eat you alive. And so I was agitated, and on the way out, as we're leaving, my 3-year-old spills chocolate milk on his car seat.
Okay.
I lost my mind. I yelled at him like I would yell at somebody who just assaulted, my wife.
Set you off.
I got, it's 3-year-old. Like he's crying. And that was a 2.5 hour ride home, 2 hours and 15 minutes. I yelled at everybody in the car like a maniac. My wife is begging me to pull over on the Garden State Parkway and let her out and walk home. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
Something's wrong. I know something's wrong. We get home.
She knows something's wrong. You both know something's wrong, right?
Something's wrong. Now because we get home and I call an organization called Cop to Cop because I just need help and I don't know where to turn. I know something's broken, and they hooked me up with a therapist, but the therapist wasn't happening until like Tuesday. My department had scheduled what's called a critical incident stress management debriefing.
Okay.
It's called a CISM team. The only problem is my department was they did a really piss poor managing stress like this, because you're supposed to have those no later than 48 hours. You're supposed to have those set up to debrief, to make people aware this could happen. These are the dangers of the things that could happen. They didn't do it. They didn't do it until the following Monday.
Wow.
So the Monday comes, and I have a therapist appointment on Tuesday. I think everything's going to be fixed. This is just a temporary speed bump. I go into the doctor's office. I had to go get a checkup for my arms, which are still wrapped up. And the doctor there is picking out glass. She's still grabbing little pieces of glass out of my arm still. And I remember she asked me, she goes, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay. I just got some glass in my arm. It's not a big deal." She goes, "No, that's not what I'm talking about."
Are you okay?
Are you okay? I'm not a huge crier. Now I am, but I was never a huge crier.
I think it happens the older you get.
Yeah, probably. You start seeing your children.
Yeah, exactly.
Aggravate the hell out of you, or you love them so much you just want to hold them under the water till the bubbles stop.
Exactly.
So she asked me if I'm okay, and I break down crying. I'm just hysterical crying. And this doctor, she's a medical doctor. She's not a brain. She's an internist or whatever she is.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know how to handle this stuff, but she gives me a hug. Like the doctor, her humanity came out, and she showed a little bit of kindness to somebody who had nowhere to turn. You needed it. Who was lost, scared, all these new things going on. She gave me a hug, and she says, "You're not going back to work yet." I said, "Okay." I said, "Fair enough." I didn't fight her on it. I walk into the police department for this critical incident debriefing. And so something had happened a while ago in the police department where they took our shotguns out of the cars because somebody left a round in one of the barrels or whatever it was, but they were above our heads, so there was really no danger. Well, we find out when I go in there, they're going to start putting the shotguns back in the cars. I'm like, good. That's a good thing. Oh, but they're only going to be in supervisors' cars, anybody sergeant and above. I started yelling and screaming, like flip of a switch. Yeah, I lost it, and I start yelling at a lieutenant, which you don't yell at your superiors. You don't do that.
Yeah.
I start yelling at him like, you tell my wife the next time this happens that only you get protected with a shotgun. And so much, like, I was going to get charged. I was going to get or fired.
Sure.
The guys picked me up and walked me downstairs and took me outside.
Wow.
Because they knew I was about to blow.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last time I was in the police department.
Wow. Wow.
I go home and down it goes. It just keeps going down.
This is when the spiral starts?
This is when the real spiral starts. Because now, what's the worst thing I told you about being a cop? What's the worst time? Silence. Boredom.
Yeah.
And that's all I had.
You're left with it.
You know?
Yeah.
You just start doing anything to cope.
What's your wife thinking at this time? Is she because I know that she has to understand she was scared to death because of what happened. You're in a situation to where she knows she's probably not, you guys probably haven't even talked about it that much. She knows when you left that movie theater, there's something wrong, even though you're not putting it together. She knows when you're grabbing her arm, when you're in that bed and scaring the shit out of everybody, that something's not right. Now you're at home. Are you guys having any conversation about the elephant in the room?
She's trying. I'm resistant to it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to show weakness, but I get it. When you go through the trauma, the synapses in your brain get damaged. Mm-hmm. All right. So that little part of you that has that little buffer that says this is a bad idea, that's all gone. Yeah. You see somebody walking down the street that you don't like and you say, look at that jerk. If I see him, I spit in his face. Well, that part of your brain that says, no, that's not a good idea is gone. Mm-hmm. So my poor wife knows that her husband went to work one night and came home and never came home.
Right.
He never came home. Somebody totally different showed up at the doorstep the next day.
Now she's with him.
Now she's got to live with this monster. And she took the brunt of everything. Mm-hmm. Like, if I got mad at her for something, say the remote was out of place, I screamed at her. I took the remote. I must have broke 5 or 6 remotes throwing it at her. Like, this is what this woman had to endure. Yeah. I would call her every bad name. What's the worst word you can call a woman? Yeah. My poor wife has been called that several times. Mm-hmm. And the nightmares never stopped, 7 days a week. I stopped sleeping in the bed and started sleeping downstairs on the easy chair just because I didn't want to wake her up. I didn't want her to show that I was hurting. I didn't know what to do. So boredom plus trauma plus not being able to sleep, I start drinking a little bit. Mm-hmm. I start drinking more than a little bit. I start drinking a lot because when I'm drunk, I forget.
Yeah, you're dulling the pain, right?
Yeah, I'm running away from everything.
Right.
And I drank so much. I would anything in the house. I would drink from the minute I got up to the minute I went to bed. And I was always a big gym guy. Like, I always loved going to the gym. Mm-hmm. I lost all interest in anything that I used to love. I stopped going to the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the things that'll keep you being you.
Yeah. I just didn't see any point in it anymore. Mm-hmm. Life was just going downhill. And, sleeping downstairs about a month and a half, 2 months, I'm drunk all the time. And I can't take it no more. Like, I've had enough. I don't know what's going on with me. I've seen a therapist, but I wasn't really seeing any benefit. They send you to workers' comp therapy too. And that sometimes can make it worse because they're the worst. You're probably not telling
them what's really going on with you either.
One guy I was.
Okay.
One guy I was, but the workers' comp doctor, he said to me, he goes, well, you were a police officer. Didn't you expect to get shot at? I said,
God. And
he got some very choice words from me, but I said, do you know the statistic of that? Mm-hmm. Only 0.05% of police officers get shot at. Only 0.01% shoot. Mm-hmm. So the likelihood of that happening is very, very, very small. Mm-hmm. And he's lucky he didn't get thrown out of his second floor window. That's because I had anger issues back then.
Well, and like you said, Kevin, there's, guys that'll do 35, 40 years and never, ever end up in a situation. They just retire. They get the party and everybody goes home and celebrates the nice career. Or you get shot at and grazed across your head in a night that you didn't expect. So I mean, Everybody Loves Raymond comes back into this deal is that moment of horror can happen to very few, but it does happen.
And the sad part in police work is those guys who I know more than my share did 25 years, 30 years, never did a damn thing in their life. They were the laziest people on the planet.
Yeah.
And they get the gold watch. Yeah. They get the big retirement party. Mm-hmm. You know what I got when I left? I got my police chief saying, well, I think he retired because he had glass in his arm. That's what I got. I got called because your people, when people aren't seeing you come in, they turn on you. Mm-hmm. They start calling you, you're working the system, you're a scam artist. I got called a jerk off. I got called everything. Mm-hmm. And they don't know, like they're not around me. They're not communicating with me because some people
don't know
reach
what's
out.
Going on with you. Right.
Some people would reach out, but I didn't want to talk to anybody.
Right.
I didn't want to tell them anything.
Yeah. Like things are really bad. Things are really dark. I'm drinking a lot. No.
You isolate.
Right.
You just isolate yourself and you don't want to be around anybody. Mm-hmm. Anybody. So one night when I'm sleeping downstairs, I can't take it. And I get the bright idea that I'm going to end it, that I'm going to go kill myself. Because if I remove myself from the situation, my wife doesn't have to deal with this monster anymore. My kids saw it. You know, a 3-year-old's going to remember that stuff. Mm-hmm. I would throw things. I would yell at them. My hair trigger. They walked on eggshells around me constantly. I don't want to be that person. Mm-hmm. You know, I grew up with an abusive father. I don't want to be an abusive father. Right. So I tried to do the best thing that I knew how to do at the time, which was to remove myself from the equation. But so how do I do that and still provide for my family? Mm-hmm. So I told you that, you know, if you're killed while working, you get 3.5. That's what was going on in my head. I'm like, all right, my wife will get financially taken care of. Mm-hmm. It's not exactly true, by the way. That doesn't. If you commit, I don't like to say the word commit suicide, but if you end your life, you do not get that. You get the families get 60 days of health insurance, whatever your contribution was to the pension system. Hey, have a good life. Mm-hmm. And so I really would have left my family in a bad spot.
Right.
I go into my office.
I think it's interesting though, Kevin, because at that time when you're talking, because I hit a rock bottom moment too. But when you're talking about this, it's interesting how you can take the irrational and turn it rational, because you were thinking through, okay, if I do this, then okay, I exit stage left. This will be good for the kids. This will be good for my wife. This will be fine. And it's interesting how that happens, because it's the most irrational thought that can happen, but you're rationalizing it. And that's the only way you can get to that point is that the world gets so dark, the hole gets so black and so big and wide that you feel like you can't grasp on anything and nobody's listening, nobody cares, and it doesn't matter because it'll be better with you gone. That's a very dark place to be, and you were at that point. So lead us through.
I was ready to make a permanent solution to a temporary condition.
Right.
And you brought something up. We believe what we want to believe, even if they're lies.
Right.
And I strongly believe that by removing myself, my family will have a better life.
Right.
I thought I was trying to be somewhat magnanimous by doing it.
Right.
Big lie. Big lie. I write a note. You know, I take my time, and I was a literature major, and I can write pretty good. You know, I write a good note. I apologize to certain people for letting them down, not being what I want, what they expect of me, or not being what they wanted me to be. I said, I'm sorry, I'm so weak.
I
had that
about
note.
Your grandfather in that point, right?
My grandfather was the most important person in my life, and he saw great things in me, as most grandparents do in their grandchildren. And
I identified with that when you said that, because I was very close to my grandfather. So when you said that at that time, it really resonated.
You know, I wrote a book years ago, and it was a self-published book. It was called Losing Grandpa. Just all that. It was my love letter to him for all the great things. He taught me everything about being a man. Never taught me to go kill myself.
No.
And that was what was.
That's why you're making the apology.
Yeah, it was. I was so disappointed that I was this weak, where this is what it's come to. It's like you sit there and you're like, wow, this is what life has come to for me.
Right.
and I was ready. I was ready to do it. And I had a louver door closet. I get on my knees, and it was kind of stupid because it was about 2:00 in the morning, and I'm thinking if I do it, my kids are gone. My kids could have found me, and I even point my back of my head away from the wall because the stupidness of my head with, if I get blood on the wall, somebody's going to have to clean that. I don't want it to go through the wall and put a hole in the wall so the outside can come in. Bugs might come in. I mean, this is the craziness that goes on in your head. So I point my back towards the door, figuring the blood spatter will go on the rug. You just tear up the rug. It's not a big deal. I put this 38 special in my mouth, and I still to this day I feel everything. I taste everything. And I cocked the hammer back because it was double action. I cocked the hammer back to make it easier to trigger pull because you always want to be surprised by the pop. That's what everybody tells you. You always want to be surprised by the pop of the weapon. And I say my goodbyes to everybody. Whoever, if you're a religious person, I guess I was talking to God at the time, even though I didn't expect him to listen. And I close my eyes and I start just putting tension on that trigger, waiting for that pop, put the tension on the trigger. I'm actually putting my tongue in the barrel, and I want to make sure that the gun is pointed in such an angle that, because I don't want to survive it.
Sure.
That's the worst thing in the world.
Right.
And then after I replay the incident in my head from the beginning to the end, I stop. I pause and I just pull this gun out of my hand. Now the gun weighs about 1.9 pounds. It was like a 50-pound lead weight in my hand. Like I could barely hold it up, but I'm looking at it. I'm sobbing, crying. Like I put the gun on the floor and I stare at it for probably a half an hour, thinking to myself, it was just a brief moment of clarity. And then you start thinking about all the bad stuff that could have just happened. Like I could have just put a bullet through my head where my kids come down and a 3-year-old and a 3-year-old sees his dad's head missing.
Right. Your rational brain comes back. Yeah.
And after that night, and I didn't sleep at all that night, I put my gun in a gun safe and I gave it to a friend of mine who I still spoke with. I said, look, you got to keep this. I can't be trusted with this anymore without telling them what was going on.
Right.
But they knew, like they knew. And I recently heard, there was rumors going around the police department that Kevin's in a real bad spot, but nobody, there was 1 or 2 people that came by and checked on me. That wasn't the only time. There was one other time where I got a call from somebody I used to work. It was somebody who was still on. They're like, "Hey, Kevin, are you all right?" And I said, I can't talk right now. I was actually getting in the back of an ambulance to get taken to a psych ward because I threatened to kill myself, and I just left the house, and they put out an alert for me. Once again, torturing my wife, torturing her.
She's living through all this, losing you every day.
Every single day. She never knew. She says it to this day. She never knew whether she was going to wake up and see her husband dead. But my drinking never stopped because that was the only time I felt a little bit normal. But it got so bad that finally I said, I got to go dry out. I got to go to rehab.
Okay.
And that's what I did. I had enough clarity of thought, and with some help of a very good therapist named Dr. Eugene Stefanelli, he gets me into a rehab. I was supposed to go down to Florida, but I couldn't leave. I didn't want to leave for 30 days. I'm not ready to make that commitment. I go to a rehab that's within driving distance, like 2 hours away. I check myself in, and now I feel, you want to talk again, you're going to be able to relate to this.
Yeah,
those walls, those walls close in. So I got strip searched. I couldn't have, my bag was, some guy looked at my ass. I mean, he spread the cheeks.
Yeah,
make sure nothing, the
like
prison wallet was empty.
Very dehumanizing.
It really is. And you realize, nobody knows I'm a cop in there, but you get the ideas of what a prisoner goes through on a daily basis. But I put in a room with a guy who's an addict. And I remember I told you my brother's a cop. And so I'm talking to him. He doesn't know I'm a cop. And at the time, I'd grown my beard. This is probably 4 or 5 months later from the shooting. I grew a beard. My hair was longer.
You're looking tough.
Didn't look like it. And I was like, oh, what are you here? And he goes, I got caught with some heroin. And I said, did you get arrested? And he goes, yeah, I got arrested. Bunch of jerk-off cops. And I said, okay, really? Where'd you get arrested? And he says the name of the department. And I'm like, oh, shit. It's my brother's department.
Oh, man.
I was like, oh, okay. And I already know where this is going. Like, I could tell you right now where this is going. I was like, do you remember the officer that arrested you? And he goes, I'll never forget his name. And he says my brother's name. I was like, oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
I'm in a room in rehab.
This guy you're with.
With the guy I'm with.
Oh, man.
And I never said my last name, and you can't have your phone. And so on the way down there, I tell the workers' comp therapist, I said, look, I got to check myself into rehab. I got a problem. I call him on the way down there, and they didn't let us have our phones. So they let me check my phone. He never called me back. I spend like 3 or 4 days in there, and I can't take the closure, and it kind of scared me straight. Mm-hmm. I was like, I've seen some true alcoholics in there.
Sure.
I just had a momentary problem. I checked myself out.
Was it hard to check yourself out? I mean, was it a big deal? Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to sign what's called a 48, and they put you on a 48-hour hold.
Okay.
And I knew I was in there, like they segregate you, and I knew I didn't want to be there anymore. So when I become uncomfortable, I become very belligerent.
Okay.
And I wouldn't eat. I figured I'm going to go on a hunger strike, like stupid stuff. I wouldn't eat. And I was like, I'll eat when I get out of here. I'm not eating while I'm here.
Eating here.
So I get out of there, and I finally get a hold of this therapist. Like 3-4 days later, he says, you know what? I can't treat you no more. I'm like, why can't you treat me? He goes, well, you checked yourself into rehab. Obviously, I was like, what? So I checked myself into rehab, and you're going to drop me?
I can't treat you. That's a good doctor right there.
So there's something called psychological abandonment.
Wow.
So psychiatrists can't do that. I should have done something, but what's the point?
Yeah,
at this point.
Right.
But after that, I get involved in group therapy.
Okay.
And this is where stuff starts to turn.
Okay.
So group therapy, this Dr. Stefanelli, he's a police doctor. As a matter of fact, his license plate is Cop Doc.
I love it.
And which we make fun of because it could be said a different way. I get involved with officers who are involved in shootings. Mm-hmm. And I realized that these feelings that I had, that I always thought that I was alone in
You're
feeling.
not alone, right.
There are other people feeling it.
Yeah.
And then I had this one guy tell me, he goes, if you go back to work, here's what's going to happen. One of the things, you're either going to get fired, mm-hmm. you're going to get arrested, or you're going to die. Because he had been in 3 shootings, and after each shooting, he got more and more aggressive. He got more and more hyper-vigilant, where, mm-hmm. Somebody comes and just says, hey, how you doing? And he's slamming them up against the wall, jacking people up.
Yeah.
And I just learned so much from these people, and it was the one place where I felt somewhat back to normal, because mm-hmm. I could be myself around these people. I could show vulnerability around mm-hmm. these people, and they wouldn't think I was weak.
No, I think that makes sense, though, Kevin, because you're in a group of people who have a shared experience that they are basically sharing their experience, almost mentoring you into their world, that it's okay. You're all right. I mean, we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. Whereas you were in a box on your own thinking, I'm all by myself on an island, and you go into this group there. That makes total sense to me. All of a sudden, you're in a world where these guys are sharing stories, sharing feelings, and all of a sudden you're realizing, oh my God, this is exactly what I'm doing.
I was right where I was supposed to be at that time. Mm-hmm. And there was one time we went down somewhere as a group to talk to somebody, and we went out to eat. And at this time, you got to remember, I didn't like being around crowds. Mm-hmm. I didn't like talking to people. But we went out as a group, and we actually went to a restaurant. It was the first time I was at a restaurant, and it was like I was hanging out with my buddies. Mm-hmm. Everything was normal. I said, wow, you know what? There's something to this. There's something to this. And each week I would look forward, and each week somebody would have a bad week. Mm-hmm. But I noticed that the nightmares, which were 7 days a week, went down. And maybe the next week I'd only have 6, and the next week I'd only have 5, 3, and then you were down to like 1 a week or every other week, and it just started getting less and less because I started unburdening myself. I started letting all this stuff out, and that's when the healing process began. So
when you say you started letting it out, you started letting it out to the people you were with in that group.
Yeah. And I learned how to associate with my wife.
Yeah.
Through here, I started learning that hey Tricia, this isn't just me. There are other people who do the same thing, and we went out as a group with the wives once, and the wives got along really well because like, hey, your husband's messed up as mine, and okay, so they felt a little bit normal.
Yeah,
but I go through the retirement process. I realized that I'm broken. Like my brain is not normal.
Right.
I can't go back to doing what I really love doing.
Right.
So it's time to retire.
Mm-hmm.
I go through the retirement process, and I'm in group the whole time. And there's many different little problems going through. And then there's the stress of retirement.
Mm-hmm.
But after retirement, the most important thing that I did was I stayed in group.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm a service oriented person, and those people that helped me get through my worst of the worst times, I felt I owed.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. I never take anything for free.
Mm-hmm.
Even as a cop, which cops want everything for free. But even as a cop, if somebody gave me a cup of coffee, that cup of coffee usually cost me more than what the cup of coffee was worth, because I would lay down $5. I never take stuff for free. So these guys gave me free advice, but now it's my turn to pass it on.
Mm.
So I stayed in for a couple of years afterward, and I helped many guys get through retirement who are in similar situations. And that's kind of, believe it or not, so that's
what started. I love that. So that's what started filling you up, Kevin, is you stayed in that group, but then you were not the newbie anymore. You were the veteran, and you started helping these guys along that were in dark spaces that you were in, that you were getting through now, and you were walking beside them, helping them with that. I get that. Is so cool, though. So cool that you found that. So cool that you found that, because it could have easily been a different deal. Right.
I was in that right place. I was right where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so one day I'd been through retirement in 2014. I see this guy walk in, and I was like, "Hey, Mike." Now it turns out I used to work with Mike's brother before I was a cop.
Okay.
And I knew Mike. I'd met Mike several times, but I didn't know him. I knew he was a cop, but I didn't know him. I'm like, "Hey, Mike, what's going on?" Mm-hmm. Mike is now my podcast partner.
That's crazy.
And
small world stuff.
Yeah, and he walks in. He goes, "I was in that shooting in my department," and we bonded over that. Mm-hmm. Like we didn't know each other, but we really started knowing each other. And that's a friendship that's lasted, and it'll last for the rest of our lives, because we bond over that common trauma, because he had gone through very similar things. And mm-hmm. I said, "Okay, look out for this, look out for this." He would call me up and say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And we'd bounce ideas off each other. And so those people in the group, and they're still, my phone's going off as we speak, because I'm still on a group chat with the group.
I love
really
that.
Inappropriate stuff gets said in there, but that's the place
where
we
humor
can be.
Stuff, right?
That's the place where we can be ourselves.
Yes.
We can laugh.
Yeah.
There's nothing heavy, no judgment.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people get that opportunity? So, time moves on. I try to move on with my life. I miss the clowns, not the circus mm-hmm. of the police department. But I never looked back. And I started just walking through life, looking for my new purpose, looking for my new way in life.
How'd you find it?
By chance. Mm-hmm. So COVID hits,
okay.
Lockdown hits. And I had started getting involved. I started listening to a lot of podcasts. I'm like, you know what? I can do that. And all my podcast concept was take group therapy. How do I take group therapy and the joy of group therapy of that common trauma and move it on to the next platform?
And I'll tell you this, Kevin, that's why your podcast is so good. You take, and I feel it, and I've never been in group therapy, but when you listen to your suffering podcast, it is group therapy. And whatever you learned and however you created that vibe, you share that. And I think it's so meaningful, because so many people are out there searching. There's so many people that are just looking, how do I get to the next step? Because they're, I say that, people build up prisons in their own mind, and they get so stuck in that ugly routine that they can't step into what they want that'll set them free. But your podcast lets people believe that suffering is okay if you turn it into success. I don't know how you got there. I don't know how this worked, but it became a tremendous success. But COVID incredibly became your science center of creating.
I learned how to embrace my own suffering.
Yeah.
Like instead of me seeing
honest.
that as a weakness, it's not a weakness.
No.
You going to prison, Brent, it's not, that's what your strength is. You wear it as a badge. You wear it as a badge of honor. I've seen you do this on other shows where it doesn't so much become your identity, but you're like, yeah, that's right.
It's part of
I went to prison.
Right.
And now when I go out and speak, or if I'm at a speaking engagement, I'm like, yeah, I had a gun in my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do about it? That's what makes me me.
And it's
because I've learned to embrace it.
That's the thing, though. It's liberating, not only to you, Kevin, but to the people that are listening to you. And I think that's what makes, you look at, you've got one of the most popular podcasts that are around. The reason why is because it's authentic. You are so honest with how you come at it, and people identify and connect with it. So that's whatever that intangible thing is, that's what people are looking for. Whatever that is, and I don't know what that is, but people feel it, and it's like glue. They will attach to it and listen to it and feel it. And that's what I think is so cool about your story, is that you went so far down to the rock bottom. I mean, when I was pedaling today, and I was like, God, how's he going to get out of this? Oh my God. But you did. And then what you did with it, it's so, and I think inspiring might be something that's overused, but when I see things that are inspiring, you feel it. And, what you're doing, Kevin, and God, I hope you just continue to grow it and become more of it, because it's so needed in the world that we're in now. I was watching Seth Ferrante's Nightlife. You and I were talking about this before the show. Man, what an eye opener that is, because, for both sides, the people that are walking the streets at 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning, the minister, the reverend, that's such a big, powerful, character in that documentary. But then I go back to the whole thing that's going on in our society between the police officer and society. And I had a guy on that was Daryl Woods Sr., and he was wrongly convicted of murder. And he served 28 years in prison as an innocent man. Most people would curl up on a ball and take it as, this is the most unfair thing that could ever happen in my life. Daryl Woods Sr., who's in Michigan, he's become one of the biggest change makers. And what he does, which I think is amazing, is he takes police officers, gets them out of uniform, takes gang members, gets them out of their stuff, and shows up, and they play horse, a little bit of basketball, cornhole, and whatever. Nobody knows who each other is, and he's barbecuing. And then they get around in a kitchen table and they introduce each other. But they realize when they were doing this for the last hour that they have things in common. And what happens is, as Daryl Woods Sr. knows, is if you can get enough people talking and get enough communication going and knowing that there's enough commonality, you can plug in. And that's one of the things I think that's happening with what you're doing, Kevin, is that you're getting people to plug in, because communication is what we're missing. We're sitting on opposite islands in our society, and we used to drift to the middle to where we could all talk. Anymore, we have different channels, different things that we can read, and we don't see each other anymore. But there are things out there like your podcast and the things that you're doing. If people listen enough, they'll find that commonality. And that's the thing that we need, I think, that will bring us closer to where we want to be.
with my show, again, it's everybody suffers,
Sure.
and everybody tries to run away from suffering.
Absolutely.
But what I try to make people realize is don't run away from it, because that is the essential. That's why I say suffering is the way to sustainable success, because you can have small successes, but if you don't know the downside of it, you're never going to fully succeed, because you're never going to appreciate it.
Right.
I use the lottery winner analogy. So if you won the lottery tomorrow, you're a billionaire overnight. Most lottery winners are not going to appreciate it. They're going to spend every last dime, and they're probably going to be broke within 2-3 years.
Yeah.
But if you work your way up and you remember the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into every dollar, you're going to hold on to that.
Yeah,
you're going to cherish
right.
it. Your freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I will bet you, without knowing this, you took your freedom for granted prior to going away.
Sure.
You woke up every day and it was another day. But boy, when you got out, how good was that first meal?
It was unbelievable.
And every guy who goes away can tell me what their first meal out of prison.
Yeah, and your inventory, it was Taco Bell, by the way.
Yeah. Everybody remembers.
Yeah, but the thing about that is, though, Kevin, is that whenever you can take hold and take inventory of your life, as you did, as I've been able to do, and have that gratitude, and then you find out what fills you up. That what fuels you, what that passion is. I always like to say, in the Shawshank movie, Andy Dufresne's got the Zihuatanejo. You can see it when he talks about it to Red. It's the whitest of the white sands, the bluest of the blue waters. He's going to take that boat and he's going to fix it up so he can take his people out on a fishing, and he's got to have the little inn where they can have drinks and watch the sunset. Everybody's got to have that Zihuatanejo in their life. And, you don't want to be the guy at 85 years old rocking in your chair and say, I wish I would have done that. I sure wish I would have taken advantage of that when I was, 35, 40 years old. You don't want to do that. My biggest thing, and Kevin, what I love about your story is that you just take an action. You could have, I don't know what could have happened to you when you were talking through all the stuff that happened in your dark times, but you stepped out of that. You found the group, you found the people that you connected with, then you became the mentors of them. And then you took it even further and you took suffering and showed that it could be a success, which is so important in our society because everybody suffers. And the other thing that I think, and I want you to talk about this, what is the Dented Development Project? That's a nonprofit that you're a part of.
So my partner and I, Mike Falace is his name. Before the nonprofit was started, we considered ourselves dented individuals. Okay. And if you get into a car wreck it's a minor car wreck, your front fender is all dented up, that car will still operate. It'll go down the road. Mm-hmm. It just won't look as pretty as it once was, but it'll still operate. So we consider ourselves dented, not broken. Only when something's broken can it no longer move forward. So even though we have a couple scars and a couple marks on us, we can still move forward. So Dented Development Project it's our attempt to just those first responders and their families, they're going through a little bit of suffering. We can ease their suffering. I'll give you an example. So there was a fireman in one of the local municipalities that just dropped. They had heart condition, dropped, died. Well, now the wife is left there to fend for herself with the kids. And we were just able to we gave her a little bit of money to pay for a week of groceries. So listen, all these things that are coming at you, that's one thing. And we're a small nonprofit, but that one thing that you don't have to worry about. Yeah. I'll go out and buy them for you if you want to. Yeah. That's some of the things that we've been able to do. We were able to give a scholarship to a family. We put it out for first responders' families. A scholarship. His father is a police officer, or his stepfather is a police officer. His father is a fireman, and he is autistic. Mm-hmm. He's got the mentality of, say, like a 10-year-old. He wrote this essay that would make you cry. Mm-hmm. It really would make you cry, and it encapsulated what a first responder is to him. And he talked about his father. He talked about his stepfather. And beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And these are people that have been raising this young man with his special needs, and just special needs is not a word I like. It's just somebody who needs to be taken care of a little bit different.
Right.
But he has to pay for special schooling, and it's a burden on them. So hey, listen, they can just go get a little bit of help off of this. That it's been helping people is what we always wanted to do with the podcast. But podcasts, as you know, don't really make all that much money.
Right.
With this, we actually can get donations to put them back out into the world and use stuff for good, and show people that just because you've gone through something doesn't mean that there's not help available. You're not alone ever. And that's what Death to Development Project does.
I love it. I got to ask you, Kevin, as much as you've been through, and you have had quite a journey, with your life. I always ask people this: what do you think your biggest takeaway through everything you've been through?
The road to the top is this long and winding road. One of my favorite movies, and it never really did very well, is have you ever seen Joe versus the Volcano with Tom Hanks?
Yeah, back when he was really young.
Yeah, sure. And if you watch that movie again with different eyes, there's this imagery throughout the whole thing. That when he's walking into the factory in the beginning to when he's walking up the mountain at the end, it's this long, craggly, sometimes it goes down, sometimes it goes up, and there's long, winding road that gets up to the top. And it's the people who make it to the top are the ones that are willing to walk that long mile, to persevere, and really understand that just because you're at the bottom now doesn't mean you got to stay at the bottom. If you take your hardships and keep moving forward every single day, that's what I've taken away from this journey. You will never stop me from moving forward. I will never go back to that place I was in because I've been there.
Yeah.
I know what it's like. I know the despair and the hopelessness that's there. My humanity never left me, thank God. And my hope waned at times.
Yeah.
But my hope will never leave me again.
Man, I love that, Kevin. That is a good place to stop. That is brilliant. I love it. Man, Kevin, what a story. I am so glad that you were on here today as a guest. I mean, I think people will listen to this and they'll see themselves in so many different facets of your story. But I'm so proud of what you're doing with your story. You're using your overall life experience and helping people. And I mean, you can't ask any more than that. So it's so cool. For those that are out there, I just got something new that happened. I want to give a big shout out to Travis Ritchie that got me an opportunity for this. But Nightmare Success In and Out is now in Indivo, and it's available in over 200 prisons and jails across the country. If you guys that are listening behind the walls, I'm talking to you. You can listen to the 50+ episodes. You can go to the Discovery section and type in Nightmare Success In and Out, and you'll see all the episodes. And I am very honored to be a part of this and be a part of this education process within 33 states here in the United States. So this is new for me. I'm just going to start here this next week. So it's a big deal. Hey, for all those who on social media, the likes, if you guys want to leave a review on Apple, you just hit those 3 little dots there. Follow the show, share the show. We like that, right, Kevin? We like it when they do that.
That's the most important thing to us.
We like that. If anybody wants to leave me a message, BrentCassidy.com is a good place to go. I love that when we can have the back and forth. As I used to say when I was typing my emails back and forth when I was in prison, stay strong, and I'll do the same. Nightmare Success In and Out. Kevin Donaldson, thank you so much today.
Brian, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.